let me first off start off by congratulating you and your outfit, Right to Dream. You've done an incredible job over the years. First off, give us a general overview of how you go about it, because the talents that you keep producing now are enormous. How do you go about it there?
Wow. So I am personally, a recent addition to the Right to Dream family. So I speak on behalf of those who went ahead of me, and I would say, from my experience, is the challenge for us. I don't think it's the existence of talent. It's really the nurturing and the vision, right? So I was sitting with my senior, Tony Bafo, and he said that word over and over, the vision to be able to put together a plan where you have, basically experts who understand how to develop the sport, right, and allow the talent to be nurtured. The same level of talent that exists in Ghana today existed 20 years ago, and maybe even more. What is different now at Right to Dream, I think, is our willingness to really sacrifice for a bigger purpose, which is to really put talent together, put experts together, allow them the autonomy to really, really work, and nurture the talent. We can't raise children today the way that we were raised, because the world changes on such a regular basis.
Absolutely.
And so our ability to evolve what we were doing 20 years ago and always look for the next best thing for our players, I think is what is beginning to bear fruit now. So, for those who are new to the game, Right to Dream feels like an overnight success.
Yeah.
But there was a time when Tom was by himself, right, 4 or 5 students in somebody's, boys' quarters,
Yeah.
trying to make this happen, right? There were sacrifices that were made along the way, paying attention to the talent, blood, sweat, tears. So if you don't know that history and you think, well, it just some big money came from somewhere and this got put together, that's
It
not
didn't
really
just
how it
happen
happened.
out like that.
It didn't happen like that, right? It's from very, very humble beginnings, but then there's that intentional sacrifice and focus on purpose and not on the quick gain. And that's what I think is producing the results we see today.
We've seen several academies across Africa. What sets you apart? Because, like our guest speaker said, it's not only here in Ghana, you're at several places, more recently setting up an academy in Egypt. What sets you apart from the many academies we've seen across Africa?
I think we're willing to look long-term, and we're willing to look beyond the player. So I should have started my comments by acknowledging my senior, Didi Dramani, who's here with us. He's also the head of our football. And Didi will attest to this, that every Monday since I arrived at Assembly, we would remind our students that they are more than footballers. It sounds simple enough. But now when we have Assembly, if I don't say it, they won't disperse. They want that reminder that they are more than footballers. So I think what sets us apart is that we see this as more than football. So there is sports development, which is, increasing the quality and the talent, but there's also sports for development, which is the idea that we use football as a tool to really grow the holistic human being. I think that's what sets us apart, because we are, that idea forces us to look long term. Right? The idea that we are using football just as a tool for your development as a human forces us to look long term. What do you need next week? What do you need next year? What do you need after football? And that's why our education, our academic program becomes important, because we know that you're going to need that after football, right? That's how our character education becomes important, because we know that you're going to need that in football, after football. So I think those two things set us apart. And what happens is, when you're a better student, you become a better student of the game. You become a better player. If you're a better human being, you're more successful in the game, because you relate better with your teammates, you relate better with your coaches, you relate better with your superiors, you relate better with the people around you. And so, our environment is a very flat environment. If you came there, it would be very hard to pinpoint who is in charge of what, because our idea is a very holistic approach. and our students feel that, our staff members feel that. And so that allows us to be different, I think, from what other people do.
Great stuff. Well, we also hear that you don't only focus on football, there are other pathways you create for these talents and many who are with you. What are some of the pathways that you create apart from just the football stuff? And what are some of those examples then?
Yeah. So Faisal told me this morning that it was 0.02% of young people who play sports will make it to the top.
That's a staggering number.
0.02. So if we know that, and we take 100 players.
That's probably why I'm not playing the game at the highest level. I wasn't part of the 0.02.
Sure. So if we know that ahead of time, then it's almost a moral crime not to prepare them for something else. If we know ahead of time that we're picking 100 players, and statistically only 2 will make it to the top, then it's almost a crime to them that we don't prepare all of them for something else, because we know that a lot of them will end up doing something else. And that's why we set up our academic program. That's why school is so important. And so if you look, we have multiple pathways. We have alumni who have become coaches. We have alumni who are looking into scouting. And then we also have what we call the school pathway. So just this week, I think we have 7 or 8 of our students who are going to be attending on full scholarship schools within America. So we have another pathway where, because of our partnerships, international and global partnerships, we have students who will use football as a tool to get into academic institutions, kind of like the ones that this guy went to. So within the American system and within the UK system, we have a lot of student athletes who use football as a tool to get an academic scholarship, to get the kind of training that they need. And so we are just as proud of Kudus and Kamal as we have of Mohamed Zaki, right? Didi and I are talking to Zaki last year. He got his degree in economics from the University of Michigan. Got a great job with a tech company and still plays on the side. For us, that's just as successful as the ones who play for the national team.
Great stuff. Brilliant stuff, really is. But let me just ask this one. How do you tell a young talent whose dream is to play football and become the next Anthony Bafo, to become the next Ibrahim Tanko, the next Abedi Pele, the next Asamoah Gyan, that you are not part of that 0.02, so look elsewhere. How do you coach that?
I'll quote Didi Dramani on this one. The environment will take care of you. Your job is to come in and work hard. Work hard in the classroom, work hard on the pitch. We don't tell you ahead of time that we think you're not going to make it. That's unfair. And part of it is we're not always right about our predictions, if we're going to be fair. There's so many examples in the football world, in other industries, of people who are written off, right? You can't make it, you're too small. You can't make it, you're too whatever. And those people end up defying the odds.
Yeah.
And so we don't engage in the practice of killing dreams. In fact, in our 8-point manifesto, one of them is to expand the dream. And so we don't tell you that we don't think you're going to become an Anthony Bafo. We tell you that you're more than that. That you're more than a footballer. That allows you to develop the other aspects of yourself, because you're a more complex human being. And that allows you to do that so that when the moment comes where your primary dream, and we all had that, I wanted to play for Hasselhoff when I was younger. So, I'm still available.
Hasselhoff, you've got somebody who wants to sign on to you.
I'm still available. At least left bench, I just want to wear the jersey, right? But it didn't happen. I took a different pathway. But if I had allowed the moment of I'm not going to become a professional footballer at the highest level to derail my life and not understand that my life is much more complex than that, then that's when you start to feel that sense of failure, right? So the idea is for you to see yourself in a much more complex way. Your primary dream is football, and nobody should take that away from you, but you should understand yourself in a much more complex way.
Fascinating. There's, like I said earlier, you expanded into Egypt. Are there plans to expand into more, African countries? Because what you say and what you give, it's almost as if every country has got 3 of your kind, or perhaps more.
You're trying to get me to give away the trade secrets.
It's my job to drag it out of you. It's my job.
I think Right to Dreams, there's that idea of quality over quantity, and so before we think about our next adventure, I'd call it, is the idea to make sure that what we already have is well established and well thriving. And so Egypt is in its infancy, and it has to take some time to look at that, and then we'll begin to look at other options. But the first idea is to really make sure that what we already have in place is solid, it's building well, and it's thriving. I also think it would be a great thing if we were copied and replicated by other people, right? We don't have the monopoly on the wisdom. We don't have the monopoly on the wisdom of how to do this right. We find a way that we think works. But I think there's multiple ways to attack this issue. And so for us, I think it would be a great thing if folks start to look at our blueprint and start to customize it for themselves and do something different, use another sport as a tool. Those are all wonderful things that I think helps in the same direction of trying to give talent an opportunity to thrive.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eddie Mensah. Faisal, I've not forgotten about you, please.
I'm enjoying it.
You're enjoying it, yeah?
Go on.
All right, so Faisal, now that I've just, to be fair, I forgot about you a little bit. I was enjoying it. Now that I've remembered you are here.
Ouch.
Let me come straight to you. As you mentioned, the number of young kids who want to get into the sport, the percentage that are going to make it is staggeringly low. And that's why the talent has to be, if you like, they're looking for precision, they're looking for something else, not only just a footballer, as he mentioned. I mean, looking at the reports that FIFA in itself has done extensively, I want us to go into those details as well. What can you tell us about it, the major highlights in there?
Well, the number that Eddie shared with us was one of the things that came from the report. And following the successful reform of FIFA, the new administration wanted to look at ways to globalize the game and also to popularize it, because obviously FIFA is involved at the elite level, but you also can talk about elite level without talking about the grassroots or the foundation. And for them, they needed to start somewhere. So for every member association that belongs to FIFA, they wanted to look at how the game is played, modernized, and popularized in that country. So that led to the analysis of the IMA, which is the ecosystem analysis, where we looked at 6 areas that leads to talent development. And of course, as we all know now, the number of players that actually compete at the high performance or the elite level, it's small. So that means this tension would have to be shifted to the majority of the people that are not involved at the elite level. And if you look, that's how the report came about. And it's being shared with all the member associations. So people are aware that, look, of course, the commercial side of the game is important, and that's how we generate revenue and reinvest in the game. But it's also important to look at the other areas, the majority, which is the majority of the people that are not going to be involved in that level, and also the gender, boys and girls, which areas are we focusing more and which areas that we need to improve. And that's how the report came about, which again is being shared with all the member associations, so everybody can take a look at. And the vision for FIFA was to make the game truly global. So every kid, regardless of where you were born, he or she, should have access to the game.
All right, then. But you mentioned that in the report as well, there was focus on the boys and girls in there. In more recent years, FIFA has been particularly interested in developing the women's game. Could you shed more light on why FIFA has made that, if you like, a more important focus now?
I think that step came from the reports. And again, that's why I'm glad we are doing science and business here, because you really want to deal with facts. And if you want facts, you have to involve science. So from the report, FIFA did realize, you know what, there is not a lot of engagement or investment on the women's football. So now it is the time to do that. And I think, beginning from the Women's World Cup in 2018, there's been a lot of investment in the women's side. And as we can see now, as Tony shared with us in AFCON, again, the viewership went up, same at the Women's Euro. So we can see some of the wins now. But without even going into the elite side, and Eddie touched on it there, football or sports in general is for development. And that means we have to look at the inclusivity and also the growth of the game. So even if we're not looking at the commercial side, how can we get more people to get involved, including women, not only on the pitch, but off the field as well? So that means getting women in leadership positions that would make decisions to grow the game on the women's side. And part of the president's long-term vision, which is Goal 8, also to accelerate the growth of women's football globally. So now, it's a lot of investment into the game, not necessarily the commercial side, but also the inclusivity and to grow the game and make it truly accessible for every kid, regardless of where you were born. Whether you're able or disabled, you should have access to the game.
Why then should Africa, as a continent, also pay close attention to women's football and develop it?
Yeah, and again, if you have the chance to look at the report, you would see, if you compare CAF or our region here to the rest of the world, our participation is very, very low. We're talking about 4% of girls here are involved in sports, which is unacceptable. And you and I, all of us here, have a role to play. And again, having that number now, we can invest more into the women's game and pay attention. And of course, the core values of sports, very important. The life lessons, the life skills, and the social skills that they pick from that. Not all will make it to the top. But again, now that we can use the sport for development and talk about teamwork, we can talk about leadership positions, self-esteem, all this plays a role in the workforce outside of sports. So I think really it's the best way to look at the human being and the development, which is the holistic approach that Eddie talked about, and focus more on that. So for Africa, yes, this is key for us. And then we have to invest as well, again, not necessarily on the elite side, but the human development and the holistic approach to that.
How can we change that low numbers and hit some high numbers there in Africa in terms of women's football? How do we encourage that? How do we reshape it? How do we grow it?
So if we're doing well on the male side, then there's absolutely no reason not to do it on the female side. So it starts from society. The perception of women in sports really has to change. There's no difference. It's just male, female participating in the sport, yes. So I think that would be the starting point, that for us, we have to come to a realization that the sports is for everybody. And yes, maybe it's the physical side, but I don't think that should be a barrier at all if we understand what sports means. Sports is for development. And if truly we agree to that and accept that as part of us, then we should include male and female and everybody that wants to play the game, yeah. So again, without even touching on the commercial side, sport for development is for everybody, and for Africa as well, we need to invest at least for the core values of sport only, which again is enormous here.
Yeah. All right. So that is from Faisal Chibsah. The ladies are just going to give it out for my two guests who are here with me today, sharing great insights into how we can develop sports from Right to Dreams viewpoint and from the report that FIFA itself put together. And when Faisal spoke about, giving that opportunity to the young ladies, not only at the elite level, but as he said, in Right to Dream, we also know that there's an opportunity for young girls to also get into the football space, isn't it?
Yes. I think we consider it for a couple of reasons. One is just it's the right thing to do. It's as simple as that, right? When Tony was talking about the speaker list, it's funny because I told my wife I'm coming to speak here today, and she does this kind of work in consulting, and she looked at the list of speakers, and she just shook her head at me. And I'm like, all right, I'm not the one who organized the thing, don't blame me. But the idea is that if we're thinking about representation in sports, and we're thinking about representation in society, we know that when there's more equality, the society does better. We know that when more women are involved, either in industry, the society does better. This is research-based, these are facts, right? You can go and take a look at countries that handled the pandemic. And countries that were led by women, at least in the early stages of the pandemic, did better. Not because it's necessarily led by women, but because societies that are more balanced are more likely to elect a woman as president. All right, so we put that aside. There's that piece. There's also the fact that our young men want to play. It sounds really simple, but they do. They want to play. So why do we actively try to prevent them, right? So it's not just that there's no access. There are actual barriers for playing. And so that's one of the things that Right to Dream tries to prevent. If you go to a women's Premier League game, and I like to, the comments that you hear from people who have chosen to come and watch is ridiculous to me. For some of the fans' comments that they make about players, that you have left your house to come and watch. So there's a bit of that mindset piece, right? And so what we have done at Right to Dream, and I think we're still very, very far away from where we need to be, is to provide similar access to our girls. Right now, the numbers do not reflect our intention. And so we have about 120 total students on our campus, and only about 20, 25 of them are girls. So we think we can do a much better job there. We think we need to hire female coaches. We think we need to promote women in leadership within our organization. So these are all things that we're working at. So as proud as we are of what we're doing so far, we recognize that there's still a long way to go. And then, for those who are more of the commercial imperative, you can look at the fact that there is a lot of commercial possibilities for the women's game. And you don't have to look very far, just this year, to look at how the stadiums were filled for AFCON and for the Women's Euros. So there's that piece of this. If you're really cynical and want to think about the commercial aspect, this is the future for football and for sports in general. And so for all these reasons, it makes sense for initiatives to be taken to support that. But I think in our own individual spaces, we can play a big role in changing the mindset, because a lot of it has to do with the mindset that some of our cultural traditions have dictated. And if we can start to shift that, then there's a little more progress to be made.
Great stuff. Faisal, I come to you for the way forward, for what would be our last take on this session. Then we move to the next one. What do you think is the way forward?
I'd start from Eddie's last point there. It starts from the mind and how we perceive women in sports. And if we are able to change that, I think the rest is easy. Once we say, you know what, it's not only for boys, it's for everybody, it's inclusive. That mindset alone now moves into action plans, and then gladly we can accept our women in sports and push them. Again, they may not make it to the top, but at least we are developing those core values. They become good leaders. They become team players. They are self-esteem. They can make their own decisions. And that is very, very important. When our girls in the society can stand up for themselves, and though they have a voice where they are welcome in the society. And that's what we are pushing for. So I'm glad Eddie mentioned that, and I'm glad to hear that Right to Dream has taken that initiative. And again, Eddie doesn't think they've done a good job. I think they've done a wonderful job, because it's probably one of the few institutions here that started the girls program in this country. So that goes to speak a long way of what you've come. So Eddie, be proud of it. There is always room to improve. And if everybody can give a feel that you have given, I think we would be in a better position than we are now. So yes, there is room to grow, but the way forward is to start with the mindset. Let's shift that thinking that sports is only for males. That's not true. I've never, seen that anywhere. And then the rest is to welcome and move on with our females.
All right, Eddie Mensah, thank you very much. Faisal Chibsah, thank you very much. Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for them.
Thank you.
Great stuff. I thoroughly enjoyed